AITA for denying my parents my house fund after finding their secret home? My name is Caleb. I'm 30, and until last year, I was renting a one-bedroom apartment above a dentist's office with heating pipes that clanged every time the temperature dropped. I work in cybersecurity for a regional hospital network, which sounds fancier than it feels when you're eating cereal over the sink at 11 p.m. after a 12-hour incident response shift. My parents lived about 40 minutes away in a tidy split-level house with trimmed hedges, a finished basement, and a church bulletin held to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a loaf of bread. For most of my adult life, they treated my paycheck like it came with their names on it. The main person caught in the middle was my younger sister, Riley. She was 26, pretty in that effortless way that made people forgive her before she explained herself, and somehow she always needed saving right after I finally had a little breathing room. I used to keep a sticky note on my fridge that said, "House Fund," because if I didn't see the words every morning, I'd forget I was allowed to want something for myself. That Sunday started like every other Sunday dinner at my parents' house. My mom, Linda, had made chicken casserole with crushed crackers on top. My dad, Gary, was sitting at the head of the table in his Steelers sweatshirt, already irritated by something he had not named yet. Riley was scrolling on her phone, one hand wrapped around a glass of iced tea like she had been invited there as a guest instead of raised in that house. I knew because I had spent years learning the weather inside that house. When I was younger, tension meant I cleaned up without being asked. As an adult, tension usually meant somebody needed money. We ate for maybe 10 minutes before my mom said, "Caleb, honey, your father and I need to talk to you." Riley did not look up from her phone. I set down my fork. "Okay." My dad wiped his mouth with a napkin. My hours got cut. That was the first thing that didn't sound right. My dad worked maintenance for a commercial property company. His hours had gone up and down before, but he always announced layoffs like weather forecasts, long before they affected him personally. When? I asked. "Recently," he said. My mom leaned forward, her eyes already glassy. "We're behind. More behind than we wanted to tell you." My chest tightened in the familiar way. I hated that it still worked on me. One sentence from my mother, and I was 16 again, calculating whether I could pick up another shift to help with the electric bill. "How behind?" I asked. My dad's jaw moved like he was chewing on the words. $38,000. For a second, I thought I had heard him wrong. Riley's spoon scraped once and stopped. $38,000? I said. My mother reached for her napkin. "We wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious." "That's not behind on a bill," I said carefully. "That's a whole situation." My dad's eyes hardened. "Don't talk to us like we're children. I'm trying to understand." "The house is at risk," my mom said. She pressed the napkin under one eye. "We can't just replace the family home." I looked around the kitchen. Same oak cabinets. Same rooster clock. Same table where I had done homework. "You're saying you need $38,000 from me?" I asked. My dad said, "From your house fund." I went still. They knew about it. Of course they knew. I had mentioned it once, maybe twice, always vaguely. I never told them the exact amount, but my mom had a talent for collecting details and feeding them back later as evidence. "I'm not emptying my house fund," I said. No one spoke. Then my mom made a small sound, like I had pushed her. "Caleb, I can help you look at options," I said, keeping my voice low. "Refinancing, hardship paperwork, maybe a credit counselor. But I'm not giving you $38,000. My dad leaned back in his chair. "You can always save again." That took me years. "You rent above a dentist's office," he said. "You're not raising kids. You're not supporting a household. You're a renter with no roots, acting like you're the only person with responsibilities." Riley finally looked up. "Dad." But she said it softly, the way someone says careful, not stop. My mom cried into her napkin. Not loud, not dramatic. Worse, quiet, wounded, controlled. The kind of crying that made everyone else feel like the cruel one. "This is what family does," she said. I stared at my plate. The casserole had gone cold at the edges. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm not doing it." My dad pushed his chair back. "Then I guess we know where we stand." That was how it always worked in my family. They did not ask. They staged a moral test and called it a conversation. I drove home that night in my old Honda with the heat blasting on my feet and my hands gripping the wheel too hard. My phone started buzzing before I reached the main road. "Mom, please think about what you're doing." "Dad, we didn't raise you to turn your back on us." "Riley, Must be nice to choose walls and countertops over mom and dad. Then the family group chat lit up. Mom, we are heartbroken tonight. Prayers appreciated. Sometimes adult children forget the sacrifices made for them. Dad, family helps family. That's all I'll say. Riley, some people only care once something has their name on it. I pulled into the tiny lot behind my building and sat there while a minivan took the space I usually used. I had to park half a block away under a streetlight that flickered like it was tired, too. My apartment smelled faintly like fluoride from the dentist downstairs. The pipes knocked in the wall. I stood in my kitchen, looking at the sticky note on my fridge. House fund. Under it, I had written a number that made me proud every time I saw it. Not rich, not fancy, just enough for a down payment on something small with working heat. $38,000 would gut it. I opened my banking app anyway. Not to send money, just to look. The habit scared me. It was like my fingers had learned obedience before my brain could object. I had been helping my parents since I was 19. At first, it was small. A car repair. The water heater. A medical copay my mom said insurance was refusing to cover. Then Riley's needs started showing up inside my parents' emergencies. Your sister's licensing program is an investment, my mom had said when Riley wanted to become an esthetician and needed tuition help. It's temporary, she always said. Family bridges gaps. I paid $1,200 for that. Then $800 for Riley's car insurance when she had a rough month. Then $2,600 labeled roof deductible in Zelle. Then $3,000 after my dad said the mortgage had gotten messy because of an escrow issue. I did not even know what that meant at the time. I just knew my mother sounded scared. My Venmo history looked like a family emergency scrapbook. Roof. Mom meds. Dad mortgage. Riley test fee. Temporary help. Please. I had learned not to ask too many questions because questions changed the temperature in the room. My dad got offended. My mom got hurt. Riley got quiet, then later passive-aggressive. You're so weird about money, she once told me after I asked if she could pay back even part of a loan. It's like you think helping people makes you better than them. I said, I don't think that. Then stop acting like it. So I stopped asking. I became useful, reliable, the oldest son who did not need much. The one who could take another overnight shift, postpone new tires, eat eggs for dinner, and still show up on Sunday with grocery store flowers for mom, because she said the house felt sad without fresh ones. The week after the Sunday dinner demand, the pressure got worse. My mother called during my lunch break. I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria with burned coffee and a plastic container of leftover pasta. I barely slept, she said. I'm sorry. I don't think you understand the stress your father is under. I said I'd look at the paperwork with you. She sighed. This isn't the time to make us jump through hoops. Mom, $38,000 isn't a hoop. It's not like you'd be homeless. That hit me wrong. I looked out at the ambulance bay, where rain was streaking across the glass doors. No, I said. I'd just keep renting. You're young. I'm 30. You'll understand when you're older. I almost laughed. I had heard that at 20, 25, and 28. Apparently, I was always old enough to pay, never old enough to question. That night, my dad called while I was halfway through responding to a security alert involving a misconfigured vendor account. Are you ready to stop making your mother cry? He asked. I'm working, I said. So are the rest of us. Dad, send me the mortgage notice. If the house is at risk, there should be a notice. Silence. Then, are you calling me a liar? No, I'm asking for paperwork. We don't have time for this. That doesn't make sense. You know what doesn't make sense? Raising a son who has money in the bank and has to be begged to help his own parents. I closed my eyes. On my laptop, a red warning icon blinked. I'm not sending anything without documentation, I said. He hung up. For the first time, I did not call back. The inconsistencies started small. That Thursday, my mom posted a picture in the family chat of my dad's truck in their driveway with the caption, "Finally safe for winter. New tires ride so smooth." I stared at it during a break between meetings. New tires for that truck would not be cheap. Maybe they put it on a card. Maybe someone else helped. Maybe I was being unfair. Then my cousin Jenna replied, "Nice. Those are the good ones." My mom sent a smiling emoji. 2 days later, I stopped by their house to drop off a charger my mom claimed I had left there. When I walked into the kitchen, there were takeout containers from the Italian place my dad always called overpriced. My mom saw me looking and said, Your father had a hard week. I thought things were tight. Her face changed for half a second. It was a gift card. I nodded. On my way out, she said, too casually. Riley may come by next weekend, unless she's still away. Away where? Oh, she said, reaching for a dish towel. Just a cheap weekend with friends. Where? Somewhere down south. I don't keep track of every little thing. My mother kept track of expired coupons in a folder by category. She knew exactly where Riley was. She changed the subject before I could ask again. Then Riley posted a photo on Instagram, cropped tight, just her hand around an iced coffee, a balcony railing, and a strip of pale sky. The caption said, "Needed this reset." It could have been anywhere, but the railing was not from her apartment. I had helped her move into that apartment. It faced a parking lot and a dumpster behind a pet store. This railing looked like it belonged somewhere with an ocean breeze, even though no water showed in the frame. I heard Marisol's voice in my head before I even talked to her. Marisol worked with me on the hospital cybersecurity team. She was 33, sharp, patient with systems, and impatient with excuses. The next overnight shift, I found her in the break room with vending machine coffee. "You look awful," she said. "Good morning to you too. It's 2 a.m. Nobody looks good at 2 a.m. But you look like your soul got audited." I told her everything. The Sunday dinner. The $38,000. The house being at risk. The texts. The new tires. The beachy picture. She listened without interrupting, which made it worse. People who interrupt let you stay defensive. People who listen make you hear yourself. When I finished, she asked, "Have you seen an actual bill?" I rubbed my eyes. "For some things." "For this thing?" "No." "For the earlier things?" "Not always." "Caleb, I know." "No, I don't think you do." She leaned against the counter. "You're treating their panic like documentation." That embarrassed me more than I expected. "They're my parents," I said. "Exactly. They know which buttons they installed." I stared at the ugly beige floor tile. Marisol softened a little. "I'm not saying they're lying about everything. I'm saying 38 grand deserves paperwork. A bank notice. Mortgage statements. Something." I asked. My dad blew up. "That's an answer." "It's not proof." "No," she said, "but it's a place to start." A few days later, I went to a first-time homebuyer class at my credit union. I had signed up weeks before the Sunday dinner disaster, back when my biggest worry was whether I could afford a townhouse with a tiny patch of grass. The class was in a fluorescent conference room with stale cookies and a presenter named Noreen. She talked about debt-to-income ratios, pre-approval letters, inspection contingencies, and public property records. "County records are searchable," she said, clicking through a slide. "Transfers, ownership, liens in many cases. It's not a secret system." I wrote that down even though it was not new information to most people in the room. Public property records. After the class, I asked Noreen what it meant if someone claimed foreclosure was imminent but would not show paperwork. She paused just long enough to tell me I had asked a loaded question. "There are notices," she said carefully. "There is a process. It doesn't happen because someone says the word foreclosure at a dinner table." That sentence stayed with me. The next family event was my cousin's birthday cookout at Aunt Denise's house. Denise was my dad's younger sister, 55, quiet, and the kind of woman who kept extra folding chairs in her garage and remembered everyone's favorite soda. She disliked conflict so much she could make potato salad while two people argued next to her and pretend the blender was too loud to hear. I almost did not go. My mother had been sending little messages all week. "Mom, your father's blood pressure is up." "Mom, I hope a house is worth this distance." "Mom, Riley cried yesterday. She feels caught in the middle." I went anyway because hiding would have made them louder. The cookout was humid. Kids ran through a sprinkler. My dad avoided me except for one nod. My mom hugged me with her fingertips. Riley arrived late wearing sunglasses and a linen shirt I knew was not from Target. I was standing by the cooler, peeling the label off a water bottle, when Aunt Denise came up beside me. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "Depends who asked you to ask." She winced. "Fair." I sighed. "Sorry." "No, you're not wrong." That surprised me. Denise looked across the yard at my parents. My mom was laughing too loudly with a cousin, performing normal. Denise lowered her voice. "I told your father this wasn't right." My pulse shifted. What wasn't right? She looked back at me, confused. "Dragging you into Riley's place near the water." The yard noise seemed to drop away. "What place?" Denise went still. I said it again. Aunt Denise. What place? Her mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes moved toward Riley, who was taking a picture of her plate like her plate needed documentation. I thought you knew, Denise said. Knew what? She pressed her lips together and shook her head once. Caleb, talk to your parents. No. I've been talking to them. What place? She took a breath. I don't know details. I heard Gary mention a condo. Near the coast. Some deal through someone from church. He said it was for Riley's future, but it got complicated. My hands felt cold despite the heat. When did he say this? Last year, maybe. Around spring. Spring. The same spring my dad told me they were behind because of the escrow issue. The same spring I sent them $9,500 in 2 transfers labeled Dad Mortgage and House Catch-Up. Denise touched my arm. I really thought they told you. I looked across the yard. Riley laughed at something my mom said. My dad stood near the grill, flipping burgers with the grave importance of a man who expected credit for feeding people. I did not confront them. Not then. The old Caleb might have. Or he might have folded. He might have walked over shaking, demanded answers, gotten buried under outrage and tears, and then apologized for ruining a birthday. Instead, I put my water bottle down and said, I need to go. Denise looked worried. Caleb, wait. It's okay. I'm not doing anything stupid. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. Riley, Mom said you left without saying bye. Nice. I did not answer. At home, I opened my laptop. I searched county property records in the area where Riley's Instagram friends had tagged beach trips before. Nothing. Then I searched her full name in a broader database. Still nothing. I almost stopped. Part of me wanted to stop. If I found nothing, I could tell myself Denise misunderstood. I could go back to being angry but uncertain, which was painful but familiar. Then I tried Riley's name with my mother's middle initial as a co-owner. There it was. A condo unit in a coastal town I had heard my parents mention only as too expensive now. Purchase date, May 18th of the previous year. Owner names, Riley and Linda. Mailing address, my parents' house. I stared at the screen. No, I whispered. No way. I clicked through the record. It was not a luxury place, just a 2-bedroom condo several blocks from the water. But it was real. Real enough that my sister's name was on it. Real enough that my mother's name was attached. Real enough that the purchase date lined up with the month I had emptied my emergency savings because my dad told me the family home was in trouble. I pulled up my bank records. May 3rd, Zelta Dad, $5,000. Memo mortgage. May 14th, Zelta Mom, $4,500. Memo, house catch-up. June 2nd, Venmo to Riley, $1,200. Memo, car. July 9th, Zelta Mom, $2,800. Memo, Mom meds. September 1st, Zelta Dad, $3,000. Memo roof. I made a spreadsheet because that is what I do when panic needs structure. Dates, amounts, reasons given, and messages around each request. The pattern looked different when it was not wrapped in my mother's voice. It looked like funding. The next day, I drove to my parents' neighborhood. Not to see them. I told myself I was just going to look at the house, which was ridiculous because I knew what the house looked like. But some part of me needed to see if there were foreclosure notices taped to the door, yellow envelopes, anything. Their house looked exactly the same. Trimmed lawn, flower baskets, my dad's truck with its new tires, my mom's ceramic rabbit by the front steps. As I sat in my car down the block, Mr. Halpern walked by with his small brown dog. Mr. Halpern lived 2 houses down and had been retired for as long as I could remember. He used to work as a title clerk, which I only knew because my dad once said, "Don't mention property taxes around Halpern unless you want a lecture." He recognized me and smiled. Caleb, right? Haven't seen you in a while. I got out of the car because sitting there suddenly looked suspicious. Hi, Mr. Halpern. Are you visiting your folks? Maybe. Just passing through. He gave me the polite look older people give when they know that is not true, but are willing to let it stand. I do not know what made me ask. Maybe a lack of sleep. Maybe Marisol's voice. Maybe the fact that he had once explained deeds to my dad over potato salad for 40 minutes. Can I ask you something odd? I said, have my parents had any serious house trouble lately? Like notices or anything? His eyebrows lifted. Not that I know of. I know you may not know everything. A foreclosure notice would have been hard to miss, he said. There's usually mail, postings, activity. I haven't seen anything like that. Your father was complaining about rates, sure, but he's always complained about rates. My throat tightened. Did he ever mention a condo? Mr. Halpern's expression changed in the smallest way. He mentioned a coastal investment. Said it was going to be good for the family. When? Last summer, maybe. He was proud of it, at least until he wasn't talking about it anymore. Mr. Halpern studied my face. Everything okay? I nodded too quickly. Yeah, thank you. I drove away before my parents could see me. That night, my dad texted me. Dad, we need an answer by Sunday. I typed, deleted, and typed again. Me. If the house is at risk, send me the notice from the lender and the current mortgage statement. I also need the bills connected to the $38,000. He replied 20 minutes later. Dad, unbelievable. Mom replied separately. Mom, I can't believe you're making us prove our pain. I set the phone face down. Then I did 3 things. First, I changed every banking password I had. I removed my parents as emergency contacts where they did not need to be listed. They had never had formal access to my accounts, but over the years I had shared enough details, used enough family passwords, and left enough paperwork on kitchen counters that I no longer trusted the loose edges. Second, I froze my credit. It felt dramatic until I remembered that my mother had my social security number memorized from childhood and still kept a folder labeled Kids Documents in her office. Third, I made an appointment with Noreen at the credit union. She did not ask for gossip. She looked at my numbers, my transfers, my savings goal, and the pre-approval range I could realistically handle. You are not obligated to create financial instability for yourself because someone else says the word emergency, she said. It sounded obvious. It felt revolutionary. I keep thinking I'm being cold, I admitted. You're asking for documentation before giving away your down payment, she said. That is not cold. That is basic financial hygiene. By Friday, I had printed everything. Bank transfer records, screenshots of texts, the county property record, the purchase date, my parents' messages claiming the house was at risk, a list of every major transfer I had sent in the last 5 years, with the reason they gave me at the time. I did not plan to show all of it unless I had to. I was not trying to humiliate them. I wanted the truth, and I wanted the money pipeline closed. Sunday came. My mother invited me to dinner like nothing was wrong. Mom, dinner at 5. Please come with an open heart. That meant an audience. I arrived at 5:03 with a folder in my passenger seat and my stomach tight enough to hurt. There were more cars than usual in the driveway. Aunt Denise's sedan, my uncle's pickup, Riley's car. Inside, the house smelled like pot roast and furniture polish. The good tablecloth was out. Paper napkins again, folded into triangles this time. My mom always set a nicer table when she planned to make someone feel guilty. Aunt Denise met my eyes from the kitchen and looked away, ashamed but present. Riley was at the table, tapping her nail against her phone. My dad stood near the sink with his arms crossed. We thought it would be good to talk as a family, my mom said. Looks like it. My uncle mumbled hello. My cousin Jenna gave me a tight smile. Nobody wanted to be there, but everyone wanted to know. We sat. Food was passed. For 10 minutes, they pretended we were normal. My mom asked about work. I said there had been another phishing campaign. My dad said people were too careless with computers. Riley said, some people are careless with more than computers, under her breath. I took a bite of overcooked carrots and waited. Finally, my dad put down his fork. Well, he said, did you bring it? The room went quiet. I looked at him. Bring what? The check. My mother said softly, Gary. No, he said. We're done dancing around it. We thought you'd do the right thing. I wiped my hands on my napkin and reached down for the folder beside my chair. I brought something else. Riley rolled her eyes. Oh my gosh. I opened the folder but did not take anything out yet. I asked for the mortgage notice, I said. You didn't send it. I asked for statements. You didn't send them. Instead, you invited relatives here. My mom's face tightened. Because you won't listen to us privately. I have listened privately for years. My dad pointed at the folder. What is that supposed to be? Records. Records, he repeated with disgust. Yes. I slid the first page onto the table. It was the public property record for the condo. My mother looked down and went pale. Riley stopped tapping her phone. My uncle leaned forward. What's that? A condo, I said. Purchased last May. Riley and Mom's names are on it. My dad's chair creaked as he shifted. That has nothing to do with this. It has everything to do with this. My mother reached toward the paper, then stopped. Caleb, you don't understand. I'm going to try. Riley said, why were you searching my name? I looked at her. Because Aunt Denise mentioned your place near the water, and no one had told me you had one. Aunt Denise closed her eyes briefly. My dad snapped, leave Denise out of this. No, Denise said, surprising everyone. Her voice was quiet but steady. Gary, don't do that. My dad glared at her. I took out the next page. May 3rd, I sent Dad $5,000 for what he said was mortgage trouble. May 14th, I sent Mom $4,500 for house catch-up. 4 days later, this condo closed. My mom whispered, it wasn't like that. How was it? She looked around the table, searching for sympathy. It was an opportunity. Riley needed stability. I needed stability. You had savings. For a house. You were doing better than she was. Riley's face flushed. I didn't ask you to be weird about money. I turned to her. Did you know they were asking me for emergency money? She looked at my parents. Riley, I said, did you know? She crossed her arms. Everybody was trying to help everybody. That's not an answer. The condo was supposed to pay for itself, she snapped. It was supposed to rent out when I wasn't using it. Dad said once it got going, it would be fine. The room froze. My mother said, Riley. I leaned back. The anger that came over me was not hot. It was cold and clarifying. So you did know where the money was coming from, I said. Riley's mouth opened, then closed. My dad slammed his palm once on the table. Not hard enough to knock anything over, but enough to make my cousin flinch. This is family business, he said. It became family business when you invited family here to shame me. My uncle cleared his throat. Gary, is the house actually at risk? My dad looked at him like betrayal had multiplied. My mom jumped in. We are under pressure. There are expenses people don't understand. What expenses? I asked. No one answered. I slid out another page. I spoke with Mr. Halpern. He said he hasn't seen anything indicating foreclosure activity. I checked public records. I didn't find a filing suggesting the house is in active foreclosure. My dad's face darkened. You talked to my neighbor about my finances? You told half the family I was letting you lose the house. That's different. No, it's just more convenient for you. My mother started crying again, but this time it did not move the room the same way. Maybe because the paper was sitting there between us. Maybe because people could see the shape of it now. Aunt Denise picked up the property record and looked at my dad. Gary, what happened? For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he rubbed both hands over his face and looked older than I had ever seen him. There was an investment, he said. My mom whispered, don't. He ignored her. A guy from church had a short-term rental plan. We were going to buy in, Riley would manage some bookings, and we'd build something. It was supposed to help everyone. Everyone. I said. You don't know what it feels like, he snapped, some of his anger returning. To work your whole life and still feel one bad month from falling behind. I know exactly what that feels like. He looked away. Uncle Mark asked, did the investment fail? My dad did not answer directly. The numbers changed. Fees. Repairs. Slow months. It got messy. And Caleb's money? Aunt Denise asked. My mother's voice sharpened. We used what we had to keep things afloat. I said, you used what I had. She looked at me with tears on her cheeks. We were trying to protect your sister. From what? Living in her apartment. Riley said, you don't get it. My apartment was awful. I almost laughed, but it would have come out wrong. My pipes bang so loud they wake me up, I said. My laundry is in a basement that smells like wet cardboard. I have to move my car every time the dentist's patients take the back lot. I didn't ask you to buy me a condo. It wasn't just for her, my mom said quickly. It was for family security. Denise put the paper down. Security for who, Linda? Because it wasn't for Caleb. That was the moment the room changed. Not everyone jumped to my side. This was not a movie. My uncle looked uncomfortable. Jenna stared at her plate. Riley looked furious and embarrassed. But the old story, the one where I was selfish and my parents were desperate, had cracked wide open. My dad tried one more time. Fine, he said. Maybe we should have explained it better. But the current situation is still serious. We still need help. I nodded slowly. I believe it's serious. My mother's eyes lifted, hopeful. Then I said, but I'm done paying for emergencies you invented. Her face collapsed. My dad said, watch your mouth. No, you watch my account. That's what this has been. Caleb, my mom said, don't be cruel. I'm not being cruel. I'm being clear. I put the last page on the table. It was a simple list. Dates and amounts. No commentary. No insults. In the last 5 years, I've sent this family over $47,000. Some of it might have gone where you said. I don't know anymore. That's the problem. But from today forward, I'm not sending money without written documentation, and after what I found, I don't expect to send any. Riley scoffed. So you're punishing everyone? No. I'm resigning from a job I never accepted. My dad stood. If you walk out that door, don't expect us to come begging. I stood too. My legs were shaking, but my voice did not. You already did. Nobody spoke. I gathered my folder, but left copies of the main pages on the table. My mother followed me to the entryway. Her crying had shifted into anger, which was always what came after tears stopped working. You're embarrassing your father, she whispered. He did that himself. You sound so hard. I learned from the interest rate. She blinked, confused, and for some reason that almost made me smile. When I opened the door, Riley called from the dining room. I hope your little townhouse is worth it. I turned back. It already is. Then I left. I did not sleep much that night, but I did not send money. That was new. The fallout was messy, because families like mine do not give up a useful story easily. On Monday morning, my mom sent a long message about disrespect, betrayal, and how money changes people. My dad sent nothing, which felt more hostile somehow. Riley sent a single text. Riley, you made everyone look at me like I did something wrong. I stared at it for a while before answering. Me, you let them blame me while you benefited. That was wrong. She did not reply. By lunch, the family group chat had become a courtroom without rules. Mom, we have been misrepresented. Uncle Mark, I think everyone needs to calm down. Riley, Caleb printed private stuff like some kind of investigator. Aunt Denise, public property records are not private. That one made me sit back in my chair. Then my cousin Jenna messaged me privately. Jenna, I'm sorry. I didn't know about the condo. Mom said your parents made it sound like you just didn't want to help with the mortgage. I typed carefully. Me. That's why I brought records. I'm not debating rumors. If anyone wants to know, ask them for the bills and the property documents. I sent the same basic message to 3 relatives that week. I didn't argue. I didn't explain my childhood. I didn't write essays about being used. I kept it factual. Ask them for the records. I'm not debating rumors. That sentence saved me hours of emotional labor. The practical consequences took months. Without my money, the condo problem became impossible to hide. The place was not booked enough to cover costs. There were association fees, repairs, taxes, and payments my parents had minimized whenever anyone asked. Riley tried to act like it was all temporary, but temporary is expensive when the bill comes every month. My dad's failed investment also came out in pieces. He had put money into a private arrangement with a man from church who promised returns that sounded steady and safe. I never learned every detail, and I did not need to. The important part was that my dad had been embarrassed. Instead of admitting he had made a bad call, he turned the loss into a family loyalty test and handed me the bill. People looked at him differently after that. Not publicly, not in some dramatic way, but at cookouts, the men no longer asked his advice about refinancing. My uncle stopped repeating Gary's opinions like they were facts. Aunt Denise became quieter around him, but not softer. My mother tried to regain control of the story. She told people I had become obsessed with money. She said I had humiliated them over a misunderstanding. She said young people today cared more about property than parents. But the problem with paperwork is that it does not cry, exaggerate, or change the subject. It just sits there. The condo was listed before fall. It sold at a loss. Riley had to move back into a regular apartment farther from the nice shopping area she liked. She complained about the commute, the old appliances, and the lack of light, as if sunlight had been personally promised to her. For a while, she stopped speaking to me except to send occasional messages that sounded like they had been drafted by Mom. Riley, hope you're happy now. Riley, you didn't have to go nuclear. Riley, everybody was trying to make something good happen. I answered only once. Me, something good for you was built with money I was told was saving the house. I'm not discussing it again. After that, I muted her. My parents did not lose their house. They had to restructure some debt and cut back in ways they should have done before asking me to sacrifice my future. My dad picked up extra weekend work. My mom stopped talking about cheap weekends because even she seemed to understand the phrase had lost its usefulness. For a few months, I did not go to Sunday dinner. The first Sunday I stayed home, I expected guilt to crush me by 6 p.m. Instead, I made a grilled cheese sandwich, did laundry, and watched a terrible renovation show where a couple complained that a kitchen island was only 8 feet long. The silence in my apartment felt strange at first. Then it felt expensive, like something I had paid for and finally received. I kept going to the credit union. I kept saving. I kept the sticky note on the fridge, though the edges curled and the ink faded. Every time I wanted to send money just to stop the discomfort, I opened my spreadsheet and looked at the dates. Not to stay angry, to stay accurate. By late November, I found a small townhouse 20 minutes from work. It was not glamorous. The cabinets were plain. The yard was small. The second bedroom barely fit a desk and a guest bed. But the furnace worked. There was a parking space with my unit number painted on it. The basement had laundry hookups that did not require quarters. During the inspection, the heating kicked on with a soft rush of air. No clanging pipes, just warmth. I stood in the living room while the inspector checked outlets and felt something in me unclench. Closing happened on a cold Friday morning at the credit union. Noreen saw me in the lobby afterward and smiled. Homeowner, she said. Technically indebted homeowner. That's the traditional kind. I carried the keys in my coat pocket all day at work, touching them every hour like they might disappear. That evening, I drove to the townhouse with 2 boxes in my trunk and a grocery bag with paper towels, dish soap, a frozen pizza, and 1 cheap bottle of sparkling cider. Marisol showed up after her shift with a folding chair and a plant she said was difficult to kill, but not impossible, so don't get cocky. We ate pizza on paper plates on the living room floor. At 9:30, my phone buzzed. Mom, heard you closed. I wish we had been included. I stared at the message. A year earlier, I would have apologized. I would have explained. I would have invited them over too soon, hoping a house tour could repair what honesty had broken. Instead, I typed 1 sentence. Me. I needed this part of my life to be mine. She did not answer. A week later, Aunt Denise came by with a casserole and a set of dish towels. She stood in my kitchen, looking around like she was afraid to say the wrong thing. It's nice, she said. Thanks. I should have spoken up sooner. I leaned against the counter. You spoke up when it mattered. She nodded, but her eyes were wet. Your dad's angry. I know. Your mom too. I know. Denise set the casserole on the stove. They're also scared because you stopped playing your part. That stayed with me. Because that was what it had been. A part. The stable son. The quiet wallet. The one who understood. The one who did not need comfort because he was too busy providing it. I did not cut off every relative. I still saw Aunt Denise. I still talked to Jenna. I even replied politely when my uncle sent me articles about mortgage rates, though I suspected he did not know how to relate to me without discussing loans. My parents and I moved into a colder, more honest distance. They were not banned from my life, but they were no longer allowed to invoice my guilt. When my mom texted vague worries, I responded with practical questions. When my dad hinted at money, I asked for documentation. The hint stopped. Riley and I did not magically become close. She sent me a birthday text months later. Riley, happy birthday. Hope the house is good. I replied, thank you. It is. That was all. The first night I slept in the townhouse, I woke up once around 3 a.m. out of habit, waiting for the pipes to bang. The room was quiet. The heat clicked on, soft and steady. Outside, a car passed on wet pavement. Somewhere in the wall, the house made a small settling sound, normal and harmless. I got up and walked to the kitchen for water. There were still boxes everywhere and a screwdriver on the counter. My old sticky note was on the fridge, but it looked different there. Smaller, less like a commandment, and more like a receipt from a version of myself who had kept his promise. I took it down. For a second, I just held it. House fund. Then I folded it once and put it in the drawer with the spare keys and takeout menus. I did not lose my family by saying no. I lost the job they had assigned me. And in the quiet kitchen of a small townhouse, I paid for myself. That felt less like a loss than the first honest thing I had owned in years. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.